Now, the new ways of conducting active positions in the opening, conducting and playing it in the middle game, designing. This is another Kasparov's game against Argentinian GM Daniel Campora. C4, knight f6, d4, e6, knight c3, d5. Queen's Gambit declined, as old as the game of chess is. C takes d, e takes d, and bishop g5. Bishop e7, e3. Not much to talk about the opening part here. I will move fast now. Castle by black. Bishop d3, knight b to d7, knight g to e2, rook to e8, queen to c2, knight f8. This is all been played many, many times. And castles long. Now, white castles long, they're clearly indicating that they don't want the quiet position when they castle short and play for f3, e4. They want the accent on king side attack. So castles, bishop e6, king b1, and here black decides to simplify position by playing knight g4, attacking f2 square and hitting white's dark square bishop. So bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, and knight f4. White attacks d5 pawn. So eventually white has to start advancing kingside pawns, and that's how they're going to get their attack. Knight f4, knight f6. The idea was designed in the opening, the idea of playing an attack on kingside. No means, no ways of attacking, but the idea. That's why white castled long on a queen side. So after knight f6, Kasparov goes f3, and we know what white wants to do. White wants to do g4, g5, and storm on a king side, or maybe even playing e4. So after f3, black played c5. Now black cannot allow white to just start kingside attack without any counterplay on the opposite side of the board. So after c5, white went g4, and here now we're seeing attacks on opposite sides of the board. So black has here several options. One option they have is to play c4, and after white moves the bishop, maybe go b5 and have a counterplay on the queen side, which I think was the better choice. Instead, black played c takes d, e takes d, and queen d6. But now what we're going to see, what has happened? This, I think, was big positional mistake. By exchanging black's c pawn to white's e pawn, black eliminated all their chances to attack on a queen side by playing c4 and b5. Meanwhile, white remained, whilst has the same opportunity as they started with, will go g5, h4, and attack on king side. So after queen d6, knight was hanging, so queen d2, black goes a6, and now knight c3 to e2. That's a very good move. And why is it a very good move? We're going to talk now. Now let's put the knight back on c3, And let's talk about this position. What does white want? Just pushing g5, and after knight d7, going h4, that's good for white as a plan. But then they have to go h5, g6, and slowly open black's position. Black is going to try to play b5, a5, or b4 in any move order. White's knight on c3 is going to have to move anyway. So in this position, what white does, they play knight c3 to e2 before they get kicked with b5, b4, and then they prepare to use this knight to go to g3 and participate in kingside attack. It's a very good planning. Knight c3 to e2, rook to e7. Black does not have an active plan. Knight g3, and I see targeting the critical squares, as we mentioned. Knight g6, and now comes another very strong move by white. Obviously, white does not want to exchange defending pieces to attacking pieces. What they do instead, they retreat knight from f4 to g2. Now you can tell these knights on g6 and f6, black's knight, they are not good defenders. They are right on the way of white's pawn storm. When white starts moving the pawns, knight will be kicked away, knight's going to be kicked away, and white will be gaining time as well. Knight g2, knight d7, rook h to g1, rook e to e8, rook d to f1. Now we can see here that black is not doing very well as far as the counterattack goes. If black is not doing very well in counterattack, so white has all the time to assault general attack. They can prepare their sources, so they prepare all the pieces for general attack. Rook d to f1, knight g to f8. Now knight goes to e3, and white is ready to play knight f5. Well, what I can say here only, I'm sure this is a good way to play for white. But in other way, there are different players. Well, I don't know if there are players on Kasparov's level, but quite strong player could have been as successful in this game if instead of this piece maneuvering, they just started storming on a king side with all the pawns. I think that would have been also very successful. That's the way I would have done, and it could not have been a bad plan. Well, I don't know which one is better. Knight e3, king h8, knight h5, g6, and here black is attacking white's knight, but this knight can be just left on h5. White played f4, and after f4, you see that white wants to go f5. There is no way black can stop f5. So black played g takes h, and now f5. So what happens? White sacrifice knight, they get back the bishop, and meanwhile what happens? They don't gain material, but they completely open black's king. Black went h4, and after f takes e, f takes e. White goes g5. This is necessity. They have to open king's position more. Now what has happened in last 10 moves, it looks like only white made a progress. White did all the attack on king side without any resistance and any counterplay on queen side. And we know when opponents castle on opposite sides of the board, just concentrate on defense only is a very bad strategy in the big majority of the cases. And that's what black has done so far. All they did was they just trying to defend, and now they are totally busted. So after g5, rook e7, trying to defend again, knight g4. Black has completely forgotten about counterattack. What now? They probably just remembered, but it's too late. Rook g7, knight h6. White's piece is creeping towards the black's king. Queen b6, g6. And here we see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of white gonna assault now black's king, and the death is very near. H takes g, knight f7, king g8, queen h6. And you see it's several different mates are threatening there, and that's the kind of position where both sides can dream about quick end. Rook h7, rook takes g6, knight takes g6, queen takes g6, rook g7, and queen h6 back. The final few moves in those kind of games are not as spectacular and not really as important, because white did not win this game because they have queen h6 move and there is mate on h8, otherwise black would have been okay. No, there's one of the ways to end. There probably were several others. Now when rook takes f7, there's simply rook g1 check and mate next move. So position was lost by black long time ago when we saw that white started moving forward, and we did not see any counterplay on the other side of the board. That was obvious. The game is not going to last long. And it didn't.